What's up, Chicago Bears fans? The Chicago Bears are 0-2 after another bad loss here in week 2. It's really hard to put into words how the season has gone so far for the Bears, but we're here to do that just for you. On this post-game edition of the Bear Report podcast, I'm Zack Pearson. I'm joined by Usayd Koshul and Andrew Freeman, and we're going to get into everything starting right now. Let's do it, guys. Week 2 after a very eerie week at Hallis Hall. The Bears lose 27-17. They were in at the end. They had a chance at the end. It was really a game where the offense looked good at the start, and then it just kind of went back to its old ways. They had a chance at the end to win it, and guess what they did? They went back to their old ways. 27 points given up, but realistically, it was 20 by the defense, which I thought was good enough for an average offense to win. But here we are. The Bears are 0-2, and it's just a nightmare start to the season.
Yeah, there aren't too many positives to say about the start of this year. You had the whole debacle in week 1 where everything went wrong. This week, the defense looked a little bit better with Matt Eberflus calling, the defense. I wouldn't say it was good or anything. They still gave up a ton of yards. Baker Mayfield was, dicing them up for most of the game. And the run defense is still inconsistent at best, I think. But look, the story of this team going into the year is that they did a lot of investment on offense to see if Justin Fields could be the guy for them. This was kind of like his trial year. I guess last year was his trial year, but this year was the year where, if he was going to make the leap, this was the year to do it. And, this team was kind of, built to win off the back of an above average offense, and hopefully the defense is just good enough to win you some games. And this game, the defense felt like it did good enough to win them this game. And the offense just once again is not good. Getsy wasn't as bad in this game. I felt like we'll get to that screen call near the end, I'm sure, but it really felt like last week if alarm bells weren't going off faintly in the distance for the quarterback position with Justin Fields, they're starting to get loud at this point in terms of whether he's the guy or not. And that's kind of my takeaway from this one. It's just a lot went wrong for the Bears once again in this game, but they're not getting enough from the quarterback position, which is a familiar spot for Bears fans to be in.
And it's a combination of a lot of things, because if you look at the defense, and yes, compared to last week, both sides of the ball played better today, but it's still just a complete mess all around, because you have a team that can't get off the field on third down, specifically the defense, and then you have an offense that is not good enough to overcome mistakes after it shoots itself in the foot once or twice, and then it just kind of leads to this entire conundrum of who's really more at fault here. Now, if you ask me, the offense is at fault, and the offensive coordinator's at fault. And it goes beyond the quarterback too, because from first play to last play, they're just too damn inconsistent all across the board to even justify playing a complete game. You look at Justin Fields today, yes, he had shades of being aggressive, but it still wasn't enough. I don't know why Roschon Johnson went into the third quarter averaging 11 yards a carry, and they still decided, hey, we're not going to go ahead and feed him by any means. And then you look at the passing game in general. Well, guess what? You didn't get Darnell Mooney involved at all, which you probably should have done. Chase Claypool, again, was better today in terms of effort, but still too damn inconsistent. There's nothing there for Cole Kmet. They can't figure out the running game. It seems like, you're trying to run this hybrid offense that, gives you flashbacks of Mark Trestman, but also Matt Nagy at times, and it's just too inconsistent play to play to justify putting anything together.
Let me ask you guys this, and this is going to be the easiest question. What do the Bears actually do right? In 2 weeks, what have they done right? My answer, I think the only thing they've done right is probably special teams. I think they've been fine on special teams besides long return they had they gave up against Green Bay. I can't find anything. I think Richard Hightower right now is the best coordinator in the building, and that's no offense to him. That's not saying much. He's had his faults. They don't do anything right. I don't know, unless you got – what do they do right?
I mean, I would say they do a great job of putting Bears fans into a pit of misery every single season. So
that is true. That's
we can
very
hang that
true.
on their head. But I mean, yeah, I mean, if we're just talking on the field, like they're nothing to do right. The run game that was good last year is just it's not there right now. And what's amazing to me is that like last year, you know, they had this thing going where they leaned into Justin Fields as a runner for long portions of basically midway through the season. They started to really lean into that. And they've basically gone away from that to start the year when that was clearly something that worked for them and helped get that offense on schedule. And they just don't do that anymore. So the one thing they were good at last year on offense, they're not doing really well right now because you know, whether it's the offensive line issues or the scheme or just play calling selection, game planning, whatever, it's not really looking good right now. Passing game is a complete mess for a variety of reasons, you know, and Getsy's at fault for sure. Justin Fields is certainly at fault. He does not look like a very comfortable passer at the moment. And then defensively, like they can't get after the quarterback. They can't create turnovers. You know, again, I said run defense is inconsistent at best. Like, yeah, it's this again. This was a 3-14 team last year, and again, they look like a 3-4. They look like they're going to be, you know, around that again this year, which is just after all the resources available to them this past offseason is just incredibly frustrating.
It looks like Usayd just dropped. Is he gone? I guess we'll just do the show us two.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's frustrating because I feel like, you know, there was a lot of hype around this team. We shouldn't have been fooled though. Like, you know, I mean, last year they're the worst team in the NFL record wise. I think there's an argument to say they're probably more talented than the Texans. Probably more talented than like the Cardinals. But at the same time, they are what they are. I mean, they're a bad football team. They're 3-16 under Matt Eberflus. They've lost 12 straight games. There's no improvement. Last week was a nightmare watching Green Bay come in and Jordan Love throw 3 touchdowns, and you can't get your offense going. And then this week you look and it's like, okay, like the first drive, we're like, they got it. They finally understand it. Like they're targeting DJ Moore, and it was scripted. However, they go off script and they struggle. They really struggle. And, you know, it's everyone. It's Justin Fields not being able to process the field. I mean, that the 3 downs he had, was it the second quarter or third quarter? I think it was the second quarter.
Yeah, second quarter.
The string of 3 downs, you know, there was a sack. I think it was another incomplete pass. There was a lot of things going on. Those were probably the 3 worst stretch of downs he's had in his entire NFL career. It's Luke Getsy. It's the play calling. For the love of God, why are you calling a screen inside your own 6-yard line? That tells me they don't trust him throwing the ball down the field. I don't know. Like, I'd rather have him force a ball down 40 yards than throwing a screen pass. Like, it's the mistakes. It's Braxton Jones again. Another hold, another false start. It's the offensive line getting blown up, and I thought the offensive line actually played better than they did last week, but they still allowed 4 or 5 sacks, like 9 or 10 pressures. You know, they were false starting. It's a mixture of everything. I think it's oddly enough to say, like, this might sound crazy. Outside of DJ Moore and Roschon Johnson, the Bears' best player on offense was probably Chase Claypool. Like, I mean, and that's bad. Like, he had a terrible week 1, but I mean, he was a little better this week, I guess. Like, I mean, I don't think he was terrible. People want to say the ball over the middle to him, he was scared to get hit. That's what we call a hospital ball. Like, that's you can't force that to your wide receiver. I don't know, man. They do a lot of things wrong. They just, the offense is not working, and I don't know what. And this is the thing, though. The offense didn't work all offseason. Like, it did not work. It did not work at all. Like, you go to training camp and you see the 7-on-7 stuff, and people are tweeting out, oh, you know, Fields is 7 for 8 on 7-on-7 drills. Yeah, but like, you're supposed to be perfect. Like, that offense was not humming. I knew it. Like, seeing there was one practice, they were bad. There was the football all over the field, and Luke Getsy came in and actually said he thought the offense did well. And I when he said that, my jaw dropped. I could not believe it. And I'm not saying he has to throw his team under the bus, but we have to be realists sometimes. Like, yeah, we have to be better at this. We have to clean this up. Execution has to be better. Yeah, I thought it might have been a good day, but we have to get a lot better. They don't say any of this thing. It's all word salad from all of the coaches. They're too scared to tell us who the kick returner is. They're too scared to tell us who the kick returner is. That is absolutely insane to me. That is insane to me. They keep that a secret. And then with that, like, leading on to like Ryan Poles, you drafted a guy to be a kick returner essentially in the 3rd round, and he's been inactive for 1 week, did not return a kick this week, even though he was back there for him, and then had a loss of yards on a run. It's a mess. It feels like another 2-14, 3-13, 3-14, whatever, 2-15, 3-14 season. But they're gonna find a way to screw it up. Like I don't know. It's all bad. It's all bad.
They're going to find a way to rebound and get just enough wins to get out of the Caleb Williams derby.
They won't even get Drake May. They'll get like the number 4 overall pick. Like, they won't even get one of those two. Like, Caleb Williams is the prize. He is the prize of this draft. But if you don't get him or Drake May, it's an absolute failure. Like, maybe, I don't know. I don't really scout quarterbacks this early. Like, Michael Penix is a name, but like, I don't feel confident he's a franchise-changing guy. Like, I feel like Caleb Williams is a franchise-changing guy. I feel like Drake May has work to do, but could be something like that. But, like, yeah, I don't know. It's frustrating.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that conversation too early, although we have to talk about Fields at some point more in depth here, because it was a polarizing performance, to say the least. But, I mean, if we're going to reference anything the Bears did better today, like, they got DJ Moore more involved, like 6 receptions, 104 yards. Like, when they actually went his way, and they could have gone even, like, and there were plays where he was open during this game where he could have been more involved in the game plan. But whenever they went his way, like, he was as advertised. Like, it's been like this, like, all off season. And I agree with you, Zach, like, where the offense will struggle for large portions of, practices and 11-on-11 periods. And then what was the thing all off season? Like, Justin Fields would find DJ Moore for a couple of big completions, and that would get everyone excited that, oh, maybe this offense can turn things around. When really, I mean, this is just DJ Moore is the offense basically at this point, and everything else is just so up and down. Claypool, like you said, he looked better today. He looked like he was actually trying, which is a big step up from last week, where it looked like he completely checked out pretty early on in that game. Like, blocking still inconsistent. That one play where Justin Fields almost threw the interception. Like, first of all, he was late throwing the ball, and it was a little bit behind. But that's a play where you'd like to see Claypool fight a little bit harder so that it's not so close to an interception on that, or maybe just box out the guy because he's 6'4", 240 pounds. Like, maybe use your size a little bit, to make a play for your quarterback. But I mean, yeah, he had the touchdown. He made a couple of plays. I'm not ready to say that Chase Claypool is like a new man or anything after, it seems like the organization kind of got into him a little bit over the past week and called him out. But, it's a step forward. It's too bad that Darnell Mooney, it looked like he got injured with like a knee issue, because that he's been a security blanket for Justin Fields ever since he's gotten here, and to not have that on the field was just really unfortunate for most of this game. They didn't really get him involved when he was on the field anyway. But yeah, to me, like, the story of this game is just like the passing game is just, it's so broken at this point. And where have we said this before, or when have we said this before? It seems like every year this routinely is an issue. And unfortunately, the unfortunate thing is this year it wasn't supposed to be an issue. This was supposed to be the thing that, got Bears fans a little bit more excited for game days. And right now it's the same old Bears.
Yeah. And you mentioned the passing game, and the passing game is an issue because for a fact that you can't expect number one to kind of sit back there and be a typical pocket passer, which, again, that's something that they're trying to make him into, which is what he's quite frankly never been. You look at a lot of the quarterbacks that have played in this system before, and guess what? Those guys are, like you take Jared Goff, Matt Stafford, Brock Purdy. I'll even throw Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love in there. Like, okay, fine. Those guys can be typical pocket passers simply because they are not the most athletic guys on the planet. But here, what you're dealing with is this insanely athletic quarterback whose athleticism coming out of Ohio State and his first 2 years in the league was off the charts. And it was like, just go out there and make a play, dude. Just go be a playmaker. And now it's like you're trying to bottle him up. And that's part of the problems of coaching staff. Part of the other problem that no one wants to talk about, that Bears fans are just jumping to these conclusions saying, yeah, well, Fields is broken. And again, there are shades of him being completely broken. But the reality of it is also this, is that he's not smart enough to overcome a lot of his mistakes that he's consistently made. And then you factor in the third or fourth quarter, it was when they went down the field and had that touchdown drive. I mean, they just kept going, no huddle, quick game, no huddle, quick game. And that's where, I tweeted out and I was like, wow, it's almost like Justin's a better quarterback when you're not asking him to go ahead and think and to have to necessarily huddle for 30 seconds after the play. But then again, you want to do that, that's fine. But then you need to have the horses where you're not making, multiple different personnel changes. Because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I've certainly seen it's just like this coaching staff is so bad, from head coach all the way down to quality control guys, that they can't even make the personnel changes effectively and make them fast enough to the point where, guys are just getting in and out of the huddle and in and out of, or on and off the field effectively to be able to mix things up. I mean, it's getting to a point where it's just like, forget, the on-field product, we know what it is. It's broken. It's bad. They can't do anything right. Someone today commented on one of my tweets saying, oh, the play calling is horrid. And I'm like, no, horrid is actually a nice word to use when describing the Bears offense. Like, it's beyond horrid. It's getting to the point where it's like, it's week 2 of the season, and going into the year, I had kind of written some stuff on the Bears, and I said there's 3 possible outcomes here. Number one, you're sitting here in mid-December, and you're talking about what's the magic number to count down for the NFC North Division Championship. Number 2, I said, the Bears are a middle-of-the-pack team that's going to be in the playoffs. Number 3 is, hey, it's Christmas Eve time, and we're looking at quarterbacks for next year already, and guess what? Like, that outcome number 3 has come about 2.5 to 3 months earlier than I anticipated. Now, on the subject of DJ Moore, I mean, every time the cameras caught him, when he had some of the big plays today, it was very clear that you could tell there was a sense of, energy, but it's not the DJ Moore that we saw in Carolina, where you knew, play after play after play, as long as they continued to feed him, that he was going to go ahead and continue to have an impact. And it's like, I said this on the Bear Report boards, and I'm going to say it again. It's a severe mismanagement of personnel that exists because you brought all these guys in, and now you can't figure out an offense for them.
It's a nightmare all around. We talked about it with Eberflus, and as we're recording this now, he's given us presser. This is from our friend Nicholas Morano of CHGO. He was asked, Matt Eberflus was asked on the screen that went for a pick 6. His answer is a little bit of a paraphrasing here. It's great when it works, and when it doesn't, you can criticize. It's like, what is he talking about? Like, stop with the word salad. Stop with they're programmed to not give anyone any information. I messed up. We shouldn't have called that. That was not a good play. We have to execute better. It's like last week when we asked him, I forgot who asked him in the media, why was DJ Moore out in the red zone on back-to-back plays? He had no idea. He said he had no idea. A day later, Tyke Tolbert, wide receivers coach, pretty much gives the answer out. It's like, what are we doing here, man? Like, this is bad. And that's why I don't think, they got to make changes. They're going down a very dark path. They're going to be 0-3 after next week. They're going to be 0-3. They're going to be double-digit dogs on the road at Kansas City. And I don't know who's going to guard Travis Kelce. I don't know how they're going to stop Patrick Mahomes. It's going to get ugly. I feel like this is going to spiral downhill.
Yeah, I mean, it already felt like this game was going to be kind of like a pivot point where if they somehow found a way to win and play more inspired, that things would look, maybe they can turn this thing around. But now that you're going into Kansas City next week, 0-2, likely 0-3, I mean, like you said, it really has a chance to collapse here pretty quickly, and we're talking again about, we're spending halfway through the year, we're going to be talking about the NFL draft instead of actually talking about, actual NFL football games on Sunday, which is just depressing in and of itself. And on another depressing note, let's get to the quarterback discussion here. Do we think there's any chance that Fields can turn this around and be the guy? Because from what we've seen through 2 games so far, it looks really bad.
Yeah, I want to answer that. I was fully on board Justin Fields. I thought he had the chance to be the guy. These 2 games have done more for his career negatively than any of his positives so far. And here's the frustrating part with it. I agree he's not getting helped out by his offensive line. He's not getting helped out by Luke Getsy. However, the main issue with him and the thing that keeps holding him back is he cannot process a defense. He does not know when to get rid of the ball. He cannot get rid of the ball quick. He's not finding the open guys. I hate the screenshots. I hate screenshot season. That screenshot of him in the pocket where he stood there for a couple of seconds and pretty much every route except for one was open, that's bad. That is really bad. And it's the same thing with Mitchell Trubisky that we saw. You have to be able to process a defense. And I think, Fields is a great guy. He works hard. He's not going to give up. He's going to try to improve, obviously. I think going into this year, I think we're trending up. I think now we are trending totally down. It is absolutely going the wrong way and going the wrong way in a hurry. To answer your question, can he turn it around? I think yes, because it's not impossible. Will it? I have a hard time. I have to see it. I have a hard time believing in it. I think you get to week 6 or 7 and this is still going on. I don't know, man. I think you got to pull the plug on it a little bit. He just looks scared to run. He looks like he can't read the defense. Indecisive back there, and it's bad. And there's a lot of people that defend him, and I defended him. But at the same time, I don't see how you can make a case for him being a franchise quarterback right now.
He inspires no confidence in me whatsoever. And if you look at last week to this week, I mean, it's very clear, listen, we know that the Bears offense is a mess, right? We know that, as Zach alluded to, the Bears are giving Justin Fields 0 help from the O-line. Guys are missing assignments left and right. And again, that's all at this point, it's on coaching. But also as a quarterback, what are you doing to get the 10 other guys on the field on the same page, right? What are you doing to make sure that guys are doing everything correctly? Because as Peyton Manning said in the series quarterback, it's your job as a QB to know your job, but also the job of the 11 or 10 other guys on the field. I'm sorry. And so at this point for me, and Justin, it's do you want him to turn it around? Yes. So that maybe, just maybe, if the Bears fall out of the Caleb Williams sweepstakes, you go into the offseason kind of going ahead and saying, hey, there's a chance that with another year of an overhauled roster, another offseason of having, $100 million cap space and a couple key free agent signings and all that then Fields takes the 4th year leap. But also then, that requires a hell of a lot, which number one, it requires him to show that this year he can be the guy. Number two, what it shows is that the organization needs to have a certain level of stability at head coach, offensive coordinator, as well as, the front office, which again, part of that is continuity at offensive coordinator, which Fields has never really had because he went from Matt Nagy and whoever the Bears was Bill Lazor, right, in 2021, all the way down to Luke Getsy, years second and third year with Luke Getsy, and then Matt Eberflus as a head coach. But then again, the issue with that is it's just let's just say you move on from Luke Getsy after this year, you fire the entire coaching staff, then you're looking at a predicament as the general manager where it's hey, are you going to hitch Fields to the next coaching staff and be figure it out and have him learn, his third system in 4 years? Or are you basically going to go ahead and say, hey, let's just hit the total reset button, which that's going to require an entire organizational overhaul. But to get back to your original point, right now, Justin's inspiring no confidence in anybody. And it's seriously at a point where it's even if he does improve, and I wrote this past week on the website about what the hell is Ryan Poles' role in all of this. Well, guess what? You damn well know that Ryan Poles is going to walk into George McCaskey's office at the end of the year and basically say, hey, listen, And it's the most Chicago Bears thing to ever do, by the way, because I fully believe it's going to happen. But Ryan's going to walk into McCaskey and Kevin Warren's office at the end of the year and basically say, yeah, this is not my quarterback. This was the quarterback that the previous regime left behind. Give me a chance to get it right with my own guy. And knowing George McCaskey and who he is, he's probably going to end up signing off on that.
I think, you know, when we look at this, and I think it's very early to talk about firings and anything like that. I think it's fair to say though that this coaching staff is in trouble, especially with the stat I just gave. You know, the 3-16, 12 straight losses. They're in trouble. Ryan Poles, I don't think will be in trouble. I don't think they want to give up on a GM right away like that. 2 years. However, the moves he's made, very, very, very questionable so far. I mean, yikes. Like, I understand why they passed on Jalen Carter. I get it. I do think that, you know, Jalen Carter was in a better position going to Philadelphia. He's a game wrecker, man. Two games, you can already see it. He is an absolute game wrecker. That might be an all-time miss for him. And I think Darnell Wright will be fine. He's just being thrown into the fire. And we got to be real with this. Darnell Wright and the offensive line has faced two really damn good pass rushes. Two really good pass rushes. They're probably going to face a third next week. They're going to face a fourth in Denver. They're going to face a fifth against the Commanders. They won't get a quote-unquote like break, I mean, until week what? Until they play Minnesota, Detroit. No, even Detroit's a good one. Until they play Minnesota. I mean, we're talking about those four pass rushes, probably what? Top 15, top 10. Maybe Denver's is not as good. But those are pretty damn good pass rushes. The decisions that Ryan Poles has made, I mean, the trenches were the absolute biggest need for this team. And through 2 weeks, they are getting mollywopped in the trenches. Like, they are getting absolutely destroyed. I don't think Tevin Jenkins fixes the whole thing. I don't know, man. Like, Yannick Ngakoue at least got to Baker Mayfield, couldn't get him down. But yeah, I think it's fair to start criticizing Ryan Poles, but I think this coaching staff, I think this is going the wrong way in a hurry for them, and I think they have to do a lot to save their jobs. I think that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, I mean, all the moves that Ryan Poles has made has definitely been with the long-term stability of the organization in mind. You look at trading down for number one, and I agree with his with the move to trade down. Like, he had to give Justin Fields this year and see what he can do, I think, because of how good this next upcoming quarterback class looks. Like, the whole point of that trade was to get that extra first-round pick next year to kind of have that contingency if things go haywire with Fields this year. But, I mean, like you said, like the whole – and a lot of things he did this offseason I would have approached differently. Like, when you go out there in the first day of free agency and you invest, what was it, over like $25 million a year at linebacker, which is basically the running back position of the defense, because your head coach just loves his linebackers so much. You don't spend any resources on the defensive line besides like a couple of day two projects in the draft and a couple of Band-Aid, like rotational guys at best in free agency. Like, yeah, of course it's going to look bad. And it was the worst defensive line in the NFL last year, and I don't think it got that much better whatsoever this year. And the results are showing on the field. Like, the Buccaneers don't have this great offensive line either. And they were able to basically control the line of scrimmage all game today. They got some push in the running game. They protected Baker Mayfield for the most part. Like, they can't get a pass rush, and it just when you can't win that battle in the trenches, it sets back everything you want to do on defense, even with some of the guys they have in the secondary that are pretty solid, right? And then offensively, like, it's unfortunate. It looks like the Nate Davis moved, and I hope that Nate Davis is all right personally, by the way, with everything that he's got going on, over the last month or so. Bears fans have been pretty hard on him, and I'll admit that I've been pretty hard on him as well. But clearly, if we're just separating that situation, if we're just evaluating what we've seen so far on the football field, it doesn't look like that move is necessarily like going to solve the issues of the offensive line. You hope that Tevin Jenkins can make a difference. But it's outside of a couple of moves. Like Ryan Poles wasn't necessarily that aggressive in actually fixing that offensive line. It seemed like they were content to let some of their young guys that they drafted last year develop a little bit, or some of the guys like Lucas Patrick get another shot at making, having a role on this offensive line. It's just like, look, if you want to overhaul that unit, like you got to like be more proactive about, spending more resources to address that. Like they should have gotten another center in this last draft or free agency to kind of come in and compete at that spot, right? They could have added more depth to that interior that right now is just in shambles. They could have added a guy to develop at that tackle spot behind Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones. And Braxton Jones, he's had his ups and downs to start the year. By the way, they could have got another veteran in there, actually, because there were some veteran tackles on the market this year that they could have brought in. And it's not like you can't say they didn't have the resources to do it. They had the most resources in the NFL this year. And when people say, like, we knew this was a rebuilding project, the second year of rebuilding projects, like, yes, that is true. Not everything was going to be fixed. My thought process is that look at what you decided to value in addressing first. You decided to address linebacker first instead of defensive line, right? You address these other areas besides some of the core areas we knew that was going to give you problems. And look, it's showing up on the football field. And it's a direct reflection of the approach they had this offseason. In some ways, I get why they approached the offseason the way they did. But in terms of the individual moves themselves, like, yeah, a lot of them just ain't it. And there's a lot of things about this Bears team right now that just ain't it.
Yeah, it's rough, man. It's just rough. Looking around as we're recording this, though, Cardinals 17-0 the Giants. They could stack some wins. They'll be out of the Caleb Williams discussion. I guess that's a bright spot. The NFC North, like the Packers 1-1, the Lions 1-1, the Bears 0-2, the Vikings 0-2. Someone pointed out in my mentions, if it wasn't for Kadarius Toney, the NFC North would be 1-7 to start the season. That's how bad they've been. And the one win was obviously the Bears over the Packers. If you took away Detroit's, which you're not, but. Yeah, it's bad. I guess let's close things out. Final thoughts. We'll start with you, Usayd. Just a quick final thought on what's going on right now.
Yeah, start of the season, I looked at it and said, okay, starting off 2-1 through the first three is a very real possibility. But just looking at, across the league, I will say this is that you can make an argument right now that the Bears are the worst team in football, okay? Because they have a roster that has talent that just can't put it all together. And so if we're sitting here in a few weeks and the Bears are like 0-4, 0-5, 0-6, that's when, the heat's going to turn up. And again, I don't really listen to a lot of Chicago sports radio because I talk about a lot of the same stuff. But ultimately, the Monday morning commutes into work with all those callers on ESPN and 670 The Score are not going to be good in another few weeks. They're already bad sitting here at 0-2, but they're going to be even worse, going into weeks 5 and 6 in just a few weeks here, because it's like at some point, you can light a fire under the coaching staff, right? And say, hey, listen, you are pretty much on your way out. But then that also has to trickle up to the general manager as well, who, quite frankly, we're going to be honest, is the guy that hired this coaching staff too. Well, hired the head coach that then hired the rest of the staff. And so, there were some improvements today, but again, it just wasn't enough to the point where people's jobs have to be on the line, even though it's week 2. Like, organizations that tend to make change in this league now are not afraid to get a jump start on making those changes. And it's just like the Bears are still going to sit here and abide by the no. We're going to give guys, until the end of the year. Like, no, you want things to start changing, dude. It's not just the players. It's the people that are calling the shots too.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how the how bad the phone calls into Hogan Johns is going to be this week. That'll be a trip. In terms of this game here, what's there to say at this point? The coaching staff, I've said it from the beginning that I really questioned the hire from the start when it came to Eberflus, and it wasn't that he was a bad coach necessarily. I knew he was a good coach from his time in Indianapolis, but was he the right coach at the right time for this team? And was he the right guy that you wanted to, build your franchise around? And so far, I don't think that's the case. Like, his hits philosophy doesn't seem to be hitting. because
No.
you see guys loafing all over the field. You see guys, giving lackadaisical effort. You're seeing penalties. They're not playing disciplined football. They're not playing smart. They're making way too many mental errors out there. There doesn't seem to be a ton of accountability in the locker room for a lot of things going around either, which is another thing that is, kind of frustrating. That was kind of his whole shtick, was that he was going to bring more of that accountability to the locker room. And so far, I'm just not sure that's the case. The play calling, again, I thought Getsy was better today, but this calling a screen on your own 5-yard line to the middle of the field, it was a great play by Shaquille Barrett. Don't get me wrong, and Fields maybe could have made a better decision not to throw it there. But what are we doing with that? I mean, it's brutal. He just doesn't seem to have the feel for when to call run plays, when to call screens, when to call passing. It's just, there's a lot wrong there. And then just the whole quarterback discussion. Again, the pillars of your organization is your GM, your head coach, and your quarterback. And right now, the Bears have massive question marks at best at all three of those spots right now. And that just puts you in a situation where you're already 0-2. You have a tough game on the road against Kansas City next week. Like I said before, it might get rough here before it gets any better, if it does get better. And if it doesn't, we're looking at another long, miserable season, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'll close it out. I just 3 words: figure it out. Figure it out. That's all I can say. Andrew, where can everyone follow you on Twitter at?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at AJFreeman25. You can find my work on the Bear Report as well. Going to have the next Track in the Trenches up this week.
Have fun.
We'll see how that goes. Last week was fun, so not fun, but you know how it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that should be out there later this week, and then for any other stuff, just make sure to check that out in the Bear Report.
And then Usayd, where can everyone follow you on Twitter at?
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter at Usayd Koshul. Check out my work on the Bear Report podcast or the Bear Report website each week.
Yeah, you can just follow the Bear Report on Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter, at Bear Report. You can follow me on there at Zack _Pearson. Rate, review, subscribe, all major podcasting platforms helps Bear Report podcast or Postgame and picks for polls along the way. Until next time, everyone, please stay safe and please stay healthy.